Have you ever walked through an old cemetery in Scotland? If you have, you might have seen something strange. Graves covered with heavy iron cages, almost like little prisons. Your first thought might be something out of a horror movie. Were they trying to keep vampires or zombies locked in? The truth is actually much creepier. They weren't trying to keep something inside. They were trying to keep someone out. In the 1800s, the scariest thing you could imagine wasn't a ghost haunting the graveyard. It was a resurrection man, a professional thief who would steal your body right out of its grave, sometimes before it had even turned cold, and sell it to the most respected men in society, the doctors. Let's step back in time. To become a doctor in the 19th century, especially a surgeon or an anatomist, there was one non-negotiable requirement. You absolutely had to dissect a human body. It was the only way to truly understand human anatomy. Textbooks were one thing, but seeing the intricate network of muscles, nerves, and organs for yourself was essential. The problem was there was a major legal roadblock. The only bodies legally available for medical science were those of executed criminals. For centuries, this system, grim as it was, provided a steady, if small, supply. But by the early 1800s, society was changing. The so-called bloody code of British law was being reformed. The death penalty, once used for hundreds of offenses, became less and less common. This was great for society, but it created a massive crisis for the medical community. The supply of legal bodies was drying up just as medical schools were booming across Britain, especially in cities like Edinburgh and London. More students than ever were enrolling, all eager to learn. This created a simple and rather gruesome economic equation. The demand for bodies skyrocketed, while the legal supply plummeted to almost zero. The universities and the famous surgeons teaching there were desperate. They needed bodies to teach, to research, to advance medicine. And frankly, they started to not care where those bodies came from. This desperation created a brand new shadowy profession. Enter the resurrection men, or as they were more commonly known, the Body Snatchers. These weren't ghouls or monsters from folklore. They were real people, often desperate, down on their luck, or just ruthless entrepreneurs who saw a lucrative opportunity. They were professional grave robbers, and they were terrifyingly good at their job. A skilled team of resurrection men could scout a fresh grave, dig it up, remove the body, and put everything back so perfectly that no one would even notice until it was too late. They could do all of this in under 30 minutes. They worked in the dead of night, their only light coming from a shrouded lantern. They preferred fresh graves, usually hitting a cemetery just a day or two after a burial. The softer earth made for easier digging. They didn't even need to dig up the whole coffin. A skilled snatcher would dig a hole only at the head of the coffin, use a crowbar to pry open the lid, and then hoist the body out with ropes. They would strip the body of any clothes or jewelry because stealing the body itself wasn't a major crime, but stealing the property in the coffin was. Then, they'd deliver their prize in a sack to the back door of a surgeon's anatomy school, get paid in cash, and disappear back into the night. No questions asked. This created a literal war between the living and the dead, or rather, between the families of the dead and the men who wanted to steal them. Imagine the terror. You've just buried a loved one, a spouse, a child, a parent, and your grief is compounded by the fear that their final resting place isn't final at all. Families started taking extreme measures. Those who could afford it would hire armed guards to watch over fresh graves for weeks, until the body was decomposed enough to be of no use to the anatomists. Communities formed watch societies with volunteers patrolling cemeteries all night. But the most famous defense was the mort safe. These were those iron cages I mentioned earlier. They were incredibly elaborate and heavy, sometimes bolted deep into stone foundations. Some were designed to cover the coffin directly, while others were like giant impenetrable boxes that enclosed the entire grave. They were rented out for a few weeks and then moved to the next fresh plot. For the wealthy, it was a solution. But for the poor, you were not safe, even in death. Your grandmother could be buried on a Tuesday, and by Wednesday morning, Her body could be laid out on a dissection table in front of a lecture hall full of medical students. The fear was real, and it was everywhere. But digging is hard work. It's risky. You could get caught. And in the city of Edinburgh, the epicenter of this anatomical arms race, two infamous men named William Burke and William Hare decided they had found a better, lazier way to supply the market. They ran a cheap boarding house, and one day, one of their tenants died while still owing them rent. Instead of reporting the death, they saw an opportunity. They sold his body to a very famous and ambitious anatomist, Dr. Robert Knox. It was easy money, and it gave them an idea. Instead of waiting for people to die, they decided to help them along. Over a period of just 10 months in 1828, Burke and Hare murdered at least 16 people. Their victims were typically poor travelers or residents of the city's slums, people who wouldn't be missed right away. Their method was efficient and left few marks, a technique that later became known as burking. They would smother their victims, often while they were drunk, and then sell the fresh, warm bodies directly to Dr. Knox's anatomy school. Knox paid a premium for bodies this fresh and never asked where they came from. This wasn't grave robbing anymore. It had escalated into something far more sinister, anatomy murder. The spree only ended when one of their tenants discovered a body hidden under a bed and went to the police. The scandal that erupted was immense. It exposed the dark underbelly of the medical profession and horrified the public. The law had to change. The outcry over the Burke and Hare murders led directly to the Anatomy Act of 1832. This act finally provided a legal and sufficient supply of bodies for medical schools specifically, the unclaimed bodies of those who died in workhouses and hospitals, and it effectively put the resurrection men out of business for good. But there's one final chilling irony to this story. After the trial, William Hare was granted immunity for testifying against his partner. William Burke was found guilty and sentenced to be executed. And after he was hanged, what happened to his body? It wasn't buried in a nice, safe grave. By order of the court, his corpse was publicly dissected at the Edinburgh Medical College. His skeleton was preserved and is still on display in a museum there today. The resurrection man, the supplier of bodies, had finally become the specimen himself. A grim but fitting end to one of the darkest chapters in medical history. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating and unsettling as I did, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden corners of history. See you next time.